Hello.
What's up?
Welcome if you are joining us for the first time, or if you're returning, welcome back to I don't know what that means. It's our podcast. I'm Jen,
I'm Ram.
and today we're going to talk about traveling.
Indeed.
Yeah. So in preparation for this, I spent a little bit of time looking for I don't know, articles about travel and stress, and just to underline how stressful it can be just universally. Like, the results were endless. It feels like there's so many articles about how to reduce travel stress, how to reduce stress while traveling, how to not fucking have a panic attack at the airport, etc. So it's not a topic that I think is limited to just neurodivergent folks being stressed out by. I think anybody having their routine upset, even in a positive way, like, you're definitely going to be stressed about it.
I think so. And this is definitely one of those places where I don't know that our, you know, neurotype differences are that pronounced. I think for a lot of neurodivergent people, it's going to be harder on some of the things that are going to be difficult for neurotypical people are maybe going to be more difficult for us in various ways. But like the whole thing is awful for anybody. I mean, I genuinely enjoy traveling. Like I even enjoy the bits kind of between here and there, the actual traveling part. Um, I like airports for some reason.
Dog, like, I don't even know what to say to that.
I understand that they're generally awful, but I think like,
Pets, am I right? Eddie was just harping up a loogie. Sorry about that if it got
or
picked
we
up.
can just edit that out.
I don't
We
know.
can just, that'll,
Podcasters, they're just like us.
no.
Their animals are obnoxious. He's cute. We love him. I'm sorry. I shouldn't talk shit.
Yeah, I don't know. Airports to me feel like possibility. They feel like going somewhere, doing something, and as a person who, I guess I've traveled a fair amount. I don't know. I don't think that I am like particularly well traveled. I've been outside the country a handful of times, but always to like Anglophone countries, like Canada and Mexico hardly count
Yeah.
in terms of like travel, especially from the US, especially where I shouldn't say Mexico doesn't count, but
Well,
the
just like those are so close, and like, honestly, when you're going as a tourist in a lot of places in Mexico, it's I don't think that far outside the comfort zone.
well, that's exactly it. Is that the one time that I've been to Mexico, we went to one of those like all-inclusive walled garden resorts, and like we were barely actually in Mexico. It was after a couple of days. I was like, "Can we please rent a car and leave this like weird little fortress place that's full of?" I mean, we're surrounded by Americans. Like the only people who are like actually Mexicans are like the staff, and I kind of don't feel great about it. Like that's not a cool experience for me. Is to be surrounded by like brown people native to the country where I am, where they're like waiting on me hand and foot. I did not enjoy that. So yeah, I was like, I want to rent a car and like go out and actually be in this foreign country that I'm in.
Yeah, like, it's different when you're socializing with people and actually getting to know them in their culture, as opposed to like just getting fucking drinks in a beach lounge chair
Yeah,
because that's their job. Like, that's not
absolutely. And like I said,
experience, right?
I don't like that very much, and I don't. I feel like if we want to go to like an all-inclusive resort and just be like pampered and waited on or whatever, like we don't have to leave. We don't have to leave Denver to do that. Like
Accurate.
we can just stay here and do that. But like if we're gonna go to a different country, I want to go to that country. I want to be there.
Yeah, and like actually meet people and get to know them.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, tangent aside, yeah, Mexico does count, but not if you only go to a walled garden resort where everything smells like plastic flowers. I mean, it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't like a bad place, but it wasn't. Like I said, there's plenty of like pseudo tropical, like fake, you know, all inclusive resorts that I can go to with like a couple of hours drive. I don't have to not only go to a country and then not actually be present in that country at all, but also like be like a dick about it.
I mean, I think you just have white guilt, if I'm being honest.
I mean, probably, which I don't think is unreasonable given the state of the world, under mostly white hegemony. But yeah,
Anyway,
yeah, traveling is hard. I do agree traveling is hard for anybody, and I think it starts before you leave for the airport, right? Like the actual
yes.
process of planning a trip. It's all well and good to be like, no, we should go to Switzerland or whatever, but like everything that happens between we should go to Switzerland and like we're getting in the car to go to the airport, that part sucks a lot, particularly for me.
And I think that is a difference between us because I think it comes back to like just decision making. Like
Absolutely.
I'm much more like I had this idea, I'm gonna execute, bang, it's done. And the last trip we took was to Scotland, and there was like this moment where it felt like there was going to be nothing planned, and you just looked really overwhelmed at the thought of like getting it together. And I was like, I don't see the big deal. Like we're just gonna fucking get the rental car. We're gonna find a couple places to stay. Like, let's go.
Yeah, a rental car is easy enough because there's not a lot of choice involved in doing it, right? Like all you do is you go to especially for us, like we're not trying to get like luxury cars or fucking Mustangs or whatever. Like I just go to like Expedia. I don't even go to like a particular car company. I'll just go to like Expedia or Kayak or one of these like kind of aggregator sort of services
Hmm.
and just be like, get me a car for these days.
You say that right now, but if that is stacked up on all these other tasks, it feels like I don't
Well,
know
of
how
course.
to assist in getting this ball rolling.
Yeah, of course. But like I said, the rental car thing is usually pretty easy because there's not a lot of choices to make, and I always go for like the cheapest car. I'm like, we're not gonna. It's not a road trip, I'm not intending to spend a bunch of time like sitting in the car. Never mind that tends to be what
I
trips,
mean,
but
we spend so much time in the car.
like I'm not there trying to get like a big like luxury car or whatever. I'm like whatever's cheapest to put gas in, frankly, and gas is for me to pay
Yeah.
is kind of where
Oh
I'm at.
yeah.
I would like it to have a roof and four wheels, and that's pretty much my bottom line. So that's easy enough. You go to a website and then you click like give me a car, give me the cheapest car. These are my dates.
Hmm.
Although these are my dates is sometimes a difficult one, as we ran into even with this last trip, because we were sort of nebulous about like the shape of the plan in general. Like we were going to spend a bunch of days driving around, or we were going to try to like settle down a little bit in a city or whatever. So it was a little bit hard to plan. I thought I will have a rental car. There's no reason for us to, if we're going to be in a city that has like actual transit options or is actually walkable or whatever, there's no reason to have a car to sit on a curb somewhere, like, 80 pounds a day or whatever. Um, so that one, the rental car thing is one of the easier things, but a lot of the issue is just choice paralysis. You know, if we were going somewhere for an event that was like on a specific day, that's way easier to plan because I know when we're going to be there. But I'm going to stick to Switzerland, I guess. If we just go like, oh, let's go to Switzerland, then it's like, when? And like, there's a whole year. There's so many days. There are so many days. And yeah, without like some kind of specific anchor or some specific plan or something, it's really hard to just go, let's go to a place. Like that's a really simple sentence. There's like 7 words in it or whatever, but the amount of like iceberg under the surface of let's go to a place is enormous.
Yeah. See, that's a difference between us. Like, I don't feel that. I'm like more than happy to. All right, I guess we'll fucking make it up. That's fine. Whereas like the experience of like, ugh, I have to go to the airport and get through security and make sure I don't miss my flight, and there are other people there, and that's terrible. Like that weighs on me.
It does. I think the one of the reasons that planning stuff is really hard for me is just the uncertainty of all of it. Like I said, if we know that we're going for a festival or some particular event, it's way easier because I'm like, okay, I know when the days are going to be, and I know kind of what we're going to do, and there's already like a shape to this trip,
Hmm.
right? But when it's just like, get me out of this country, I want to be somewhere else. We're going to go to Kenya for a week. I don't know anything about Kenya. I know it's in Africa, and that's it. That's the sum total of things that I know about Kenya. I could find it on a map, but it would take me a second. So I know absolutely nothing about it, and that is a more difficult kind of trip paradigm for me. It was the same way with the Scotland because I was like, I'm so excited to go back to Scotland. I just like want to be there, but not knowing what to do when we're there because I worry about getting there and then being sitting in a hotel room looking at each other like, okay, well, what do you know? We came 6,000 miles. Now what?
Which is such an unreasonable concern, I feel like.
Well, sure.
I mean, there's never been a time, I think, ever where I was like, I want to sit on this bed and run a room service, and we're not even going to open the fucking curtains, Graham.
True. But, anxiety is not a reasonable thing. It's not
fair point, yeah.
So that's there. And I have like a deep-seated like people-pleasing tendency, so like I'm going into any kind of trip, I'm very concerned. And you saw it when we were playing the Scotland thing. I was like, is this gonna be okay? Is this gonna be fun for you? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And everything, as opposed to just like planning a thing and being like, now we're gonna go do this, we're gonna go do that, whatever. I feel bad about that.
Part of me wonders if that's like past relationship baggage like creeping in, because like I said, I'm more than happy to do like pretty much anything at least once. Like I will try things, and I'm not worried about like, oh, Graham planned this garbage outing and now I'm mad at him. Like that's never going to be a thing.
Sure. I think Scotland is not a bad example, but Scotland is hard because there are so many particular things like that I would want to go and see and do, and they're all kind of the same thing.
Yeah, we saw so many war memorials, you guys.
There'll be so many like piles of stones that I want to like hike half a mile to see a pile of stones in the middle of a field somewhere. Or how many castles can we go to in a week?
All the castles.
It's a lot, actually. We went to very few castles in the grand scheme of things.
We did, but they were fucking excellent.
They were good, yeah.
It like all of your concerns aside, like you planned a really good trip. Like I honestly like kind of just said like, here's 2 things I want to do. We did so much.
There was a lot. And one of the other kind of aspects that I think affects planning in particular is I have no perception of time. I don't experience the passage of time. I can't conceive of how long something is. Like I know that an hour is a longer unit of time than 5 minutes is, but I don't know what that means like physically in my body and my brain. Like I can't, if you were to put me in an empty room and tell me that I was either going to wait for 5 minutes or I was going to wait for an hour, beyond like 6 or 7 seconds, I have no means to tell the difference. So because I am not aware of time as a thing, I can't plan around time in a way that is like feasible at all. So a great example of this is, you're right, we did spend a lot of time in the car. Because the planning on that was largely like, oh, this drive, Google says this drive is 3 hours. That's not too long. That seems fine. And I think that part of it is I don't really understand the sort of agglutinating effect of several 3-hour drives in a given day. But also like, I don't know. I think Google's estimations are often based on like a perfect world where, you don't hit every red light or like there's not an accident or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like,
or a road isn't actually just a fucking bike path.
That, although we did get to see some sheep being driven along the road.
Yeah, that was definitely charming.
But like I think like, and I'm also a kind of person who, up until comparatively recently in my life, like driving was just a pastime, was just a hobby for me. So I'm like, oh, I went out and drove. I had nothing to do the other weekend. I went out and drove in the mountains for 9 hours, and I'm like, that's not long. That's even quick. Like that's and I think that there's a fundamental difference between like I'm doing this driving for the sake of the driving itself, and I'm doing this driving like to get somewhere. I think I kind of misunderstand that, but yeah, planning around like travel time is kind of a hard thing for me. It's because, like I said, I don't really understand. At this point in my life or in our lives, like I don't actually want to spend 8 hours in the car, or I don't want to do like 2 4-hour trips in a day. I know intellectually that I don't want to do that, but like it was easy enough, I guess, looking at the thing and being like, okay, well, I want to make these 10 stops or whatever. So let's just like organize them in a general sort of path and then figure out, oh, it's only 2 hours between A and B. Never mind that like there are going to be delays for things. There are probably going to be, wrong turns and things like that. And even just basic shit. Like we're going to have to stop and go to the bathroom occasionally. We're going to have to stop and get food, whatever.
Hmm.
A lot of that stuff doesn't really factor into my sense of like planning vis-a-vis time. So that's that's a kind of a rough thing. But I think that's probably common for a lot of folks with ADHD because the chronic nausea is such a strong symptom for a lot of us. Um, and I think sometimes I don't know where this comes from like a neurodivergence perspective, but a lot of times I will see that something is like slated for a particular length of time. This museum exhibition takes an hour to walk through, or this event is going to be 2 hours long or whatever.
Hmm.
And I think that I take that very literally. I guess it's the autism. I think that I take that very literally, and I go, okay, well, from the time we get there till the time we leave is going to be exactly 60 minutes, and inevitably it's not.
Yeah, your expectation for things to start on time is very high. We were talking about this the other night. Graham frequently comes to comedy shows, and you'll get a start time of 7 o'clock, and that's a rock and roll 7 o'clock, as my friend Harrison likes to say. That could mean like a quarter to 8, depending on where the fuck you are. And while I don't love it, you become very annoyed.
I do. I do. It is a deeply stressful thing. First of all, you're lying to me. When you say an event starts at 8, the event fucking starts at 8. If the event starts at 8:02, that's one thing. If the event starts at maybe 20 after 8, no, you're fucking lying to me. Put 8:30 on the poster. But part of it is I am so bad at waiting. This is one of the places where my ADHD can be really like bad.
Mhm.
I can't wait. I can't just sit and do nothing.
I mean, I identify with that very strongly. It's one of like the biggest things where like it's not so bad now because I'm not like taking public transportation everywhere, but like I cannot quit smoking because I don't know what non-smokers do when they fucking are waiting. Like what are you guys doing? Yeah, exactly. It's just like so fucking painful. So I get that.
Waiting is awful, and so it's the combination of like failure to like adhere to what you said you were going to do,
Mhm.
like being lied to by the promoter or the event or wherever else it is. That combination, like that irritates me to begin with, and then I have to wait, and it's like the waiting itself is bad, and that kind of mixes around with being annoyed that like, you said it started at X, so why isn't it starting at X? And so those sorts of things form a real fun little stew. Yeah, it's stewing. See, look at that.
Mm, you
Um,
got a stew going.
and then one of the other things about it, particularly with regard to comedy shows that tend to be a little bit loose around like the duration of the event itself, is I start to think like, okay, well, I expected that the event started at 8, so it would be done at 9, and then like 9:15 or so, we're on our way out. Now I'm like, well, the event started at 8:30, so it's going to be at the earliest 9:30 before we leave, and probably closer to 10, and like half an hour to get home, or what, you know what I mean? Like it's again the difficulties with like processing time and with dealing with time. Um, I am aware that I have that problem, and it creates a lot of anxiety because I'm like, I know that I have to deal with this thing that I don't understand and can't perceive, and so it just makes me anxious about it because I'm like, I don't, I don't have a good analogy for that one, but um, yeah, I'm sure that people can split that.
I think that kind of relates to like one of the other big stressors with travel is upset in routine. And again, it's not a thing that I think is limited to the one person or another. Like upsetting your routine, I don't know, after you're like fucking 25 or something, like it's a whole ass thing. Like your sleep schedule's already blown to shit because jet lag. And then I mean, I'm such a little bitch. I'm like, my toothbrush isn't the same because I can't travel with my big fancy one with the flosser in it. And like, even that, I'm just like, I fucking hate this bathroom.
Welcome to autism. Yeah, changes in routine are a huge thing, especially for autistic people, because we need it. We need routine and structure in a way that sometimes I don't think people like really get. Like,
Hmm.
there's a lot of talk about like black and white thinking and stubbornness, and autistic folks, and a lot of it is just around routine. And it's like we either consciously or unconsciously need routine in order to function, in order to make it through the day. And so the changes to that, even when it's a positive change, like I don't like my job. I don't like sitting around the house doing nothing. So we go somewhere else and I'm like, oh cool, we're gonna sit around and do nothing somewhere else. But that in and of itself is nice. But like I understand that it's a positive outcome, but still the notion that I have to disrupt my routine is tough. And the other thing about it is that this is one of the really fun places where um, there is a really high incidence of comorbidity of autism and ADHD. And there are a lot of places where the two things overlap. This is not that place. Routine is not a place where autism and ADHD agree. So autism needs routine and structure. ADHD needs chaos, needs things to be different, needs novelty all the time. And so I think in this case it's sort of beneficial almost because I can settle into being like I'm gonna have a different routine, but like part of me hates that, but part of me's like, good, finally, thank you.
Right.
So I think that's one of the few places where that kind of like butting heads of the two attributes, two neurotypes, is not quite as bad as it could be. I mean, it's incredibly frustrating in most cases, but and changes to your routine. I mean, like you said, your toothbrush, you don't realize everything changes. The shape of your pillow and the sheets that are on the bed and
Oh
the
my God, the bed that killed both of our backs in Boston.
the bed that we slept in that was so soft that we both died as a result of it.
Oh my God.
Or things like the direction of the sunlight when you wake up in the morning, or like just the ambient humidity where you're going. We went to Boston and the air was like soupy a lot of the time. It's just like that, and that's a huge change for us being desert dwellers. So
You guys, my skin broke out so bad. My hair looked like garbage. You were traveling with Oscar the fucking Grouch, basically. It was. I hate humidity.
it's not my favorite. I got very used to it. Moving from Boston to Denver, that's probably the thing that I got used to the quickest. Was like,
Yeah.
oh shit, it's really dry here all the time. That sucks. And then 2 days later,
No,
I was
it's
like,
the
oh, no,
best.
this is good.
I am a delicate desert flower, bitch.
Prefer this truly. But all of those kinds of little things, and it for someone who is neurodivergent, particularly for autistic people, everything is different. Everything's changed, and there's a lot of uncertainty around that, and that's what us out. And then I think for those of us who are ADHD is often, I mean, it's in the name, like attention deficit. It's not that we have a deficit, it's kind of the other way around. We can't regulate our attention and our focus the same way that neurotypical people do. So we notice everything all the time. I mean, you've commented how many times, like, I can't believe you noticed that, or I can't believe you remember that. So we're, ADHD people, we're constantly noticing everything around us. And then that feeds into like the autism machine that's like everything has to be the same, and we're getting all of these like incorrect inputs.
That's a fun way to say that.
But it is, and it's a really
Pressed an incorrect key. Life.
Exactly. We're getting responses. We're getting stimuli that we're not expecting. They're different, and it can come down to things that you don't necessarily think about, like a weird thing where, for example, Girl Scout cookies are different depending on which side of the country you're on. Or we've talked about how Dunks kind of sucks here. But
Bro, you guys, what are you doing with your franchises?
Dunks is pretty trash here. And then you go back to New England and it's like, oh, I see why people like this.
Yeah, there was like this little one. Where did we say? Dorchester? I think that's right. Anyways, we went to a Dunks and I was like, what the fuck? Everybody outside of Boston is getting rammed in the ass with terrible donuts by Dunkin' Donuts. We think it's garbage, so you guys know. So if anyone ever hears this,
it's pretty bad here in Denver. Probably is elsewhere. I mean, I assume that they're not, making shit on site like they do.
Even the airport Dunks in Boston was good.
Yeah.
And you get out here and you go in one, and it's fucking garbage. I'm not sorry.
It's pretty bad. But that's exactly it, right? Is that it's that, but with everything.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that doesn't necessarily bother me because like I'm aware that I'm used to it at this point, but like at lower elevations, you need higher octane gas.
Okay.
So I know this is a weird thing, but stay with me. So here in Denver, the like standard gas grades are 85, 87, and 91, right? Ba-
Sure.
Back east, it's 87, 89, and 93 are like the standard grades of gas. So you have higher octane gas, and like if you if you just think of it as like my car needs whatever mid grade is, you're fine, right? You just pick the button in the middle. But if you get used to thinking my car needs mid grade and mid grade means 87, then all of a sudden you're putting cheap gas in if you go out east or whatever. Like it's one of these like subtle differences. It's not gonna blow your car up, but that's the thing is that like there are so many of these weird little differences.
That fucking gets to you?
A little bit. I mean, it not by itself, and like I said, I know this and I'm used to it, but it's just sort of an example of like a weird little thing that you don't consider,
Sure.
and how those things kind of start to stack up and like, um, here if we're at home, you're going to the liquor store. At least we're going to the patty,
I hate that.
and like if that's not
You need to explain right now because my favorite podcast got yelled at for using that term.
no way. So I don't know if it's just in Austin or if it's a New England thing. I don't really know the reach of the thing, but um, this is my understanding, and don't yell at me if I'm wrong. Vast and powerful listener base, but because Massachusetts was a Puritan colony, a lot of the like the so-called blue laws are still in effect, and are still on the books and everything, particularly regarding alcohol. So until very recently, Massachusetts was completely dry on Sunday. You couldn't have any liquor sales at all. And when a liquor store sold you something, it had to be wrapped in such a way that like no one could see what it was. So even if you buy like a 6 pack of beer, they got to put it in a like a paper bag. Or if you buy a bottle of something, they've got to like wrap it up somehow so that people can't see it. I don't know why, but that was the deal. So anyway, because everyone who leaves the liquor store leaves with a package, they came to be called package stores. And the inevitable result of that, particularly in and around the Boston area, is package store got shortened to packy. And so there you have it.
And shockingly, everyone who uses that term has no idea that it's a racial slur. And so, anyways, that's not what is meant when Graham says.
That's a very good point. My understanding of that slur is that it's typically British. I don't know that's really used here.
It's not, but like there are many people who are aware of it, and that was how I took it the first time I heard you say it, and I was like, "The fuck did you just say?"
Okay, yeah, no, that's a very good point. Yeah, so again, cultural differences, in various places.
On Morbid, Elena and Ash, like they're in Boston, and they used it one time, and they had to issue a correction or apology at the beginning of one of their episodes, like I had no idea this is what it means, and they said the same thing you said. Yeah. And like they're not at all, and so it's just like in context I only knew it because you had explained it to me after we had our like I don't know what that means moment, and so I was like, oh, I know she doesn't mean that, but there were plenty of people who were like, you can't fucking say that.
It's fun for me to have the I don't know what that means moment in the other direction for once. 98% of the time when someone in this relationship says that, it's me. But yeah, so like kind of all of those little kind of differences stack up to it can create a sense of alienation. It can create a sense of being like, I know, and it's not necessarily a thing where I'm like consciously thinking about it, but just being aware that I'm somewhere different from like where I'm used to and from my like home and routine and whatever can be tough. And I think this is another place where kind of the non-overlap, where the outside the Venn diagram, being autism and ADHD, can actually be a little bit helpful because like the autistic part of me is like looking around all wild-eyed because I don't recognize anything, but then the ADHD part is like, cool, everything's new, love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so routine changes and then just like the times of things, I mean, I don't make an effort to get out of bed at 6 a.m. when we're on vacation, and so sleep becomes different and we might stay up later or whatever. I guess depending on where you go, there could be like seasonal light changes and like the length of the day is different or whatever. Just so kind of all of these, ambient things. And it can sometimes be hard to judge. Like I have a medication that I have to take at the same time every day. And so I have to be like fairly vigilant about that. I mean, I won't die immediately if I don't take it, but they say take it at the same time every day. So, I try to. But something like that, if I get used to the idea that like it's light out when that time comes, it's time to take my medicine, and we, go to Oslo or something, and it gets dark at 3 in the afternoon, suddenly I'm like, oh shit, when do I, time zone changes, the notion that like I got up this morning and I got on a plane at 10 o'clock in the morning and we were on the plane for 5 hours. So that means it's now 5 o'clock, or 3 o'clock rather. But we went 3 time zones and now it's, later than it's supposed to be or whatever like that. So that, I mean, that's jet lag for, I guess, anyone who's not familiar with it. It's just that kind of adjustment. But that, jet lag is it's hard. It is a really difficult thing to kind of get around and deal with. And I think I've always been lucky that I'm not like super affected by it in a lot of cases. And I think part of that is just because I don't know what time is anyway. So like you tell me that it's a different time now that I think it's supposed to be. I'm like, that sounds right.
Sure, why not?
Right. I literally can't argue with that.
Mhm.
But yeah, changes in routine are hard. And then the other thing about it is, you go somewhere long enough and that becomes your routine. And so then you go home and you have to shift back to your previous routine. If you're away for like 2 or 3 days, it's one thing. But, we were out of the country. When we went to Scotland last year, we were out of the country for about 2 weeks. And coming back, it was like, I got to reset my alarms and I got to, the way that I eat changes and the way that like I do things on the daily changes and everything else, which is rough, which is a hard kind of stressful thing. I hear people say like I need a vacation from my vacation. And I feel like that's where a lot of it comes from. It's just like the disruption in routine, especially if there's a really significant difference. If we were to go somewhere that was like culturally very, very, we went to India or something for a couple of weeks, then I feel like I would be, if we went to India for 15 minutes, I feel like I'd be overwhelmed. But
Yeah, I feel like that would be a test for you.
I would love to, but I know very little about India, honestly, and I don't trust that my conception of India is like in the same galaxy as accurate. Like I would never be like, oh, I know things about India.
Well, that's why you travel, so you can learn.
Right,
Like, you're not supposed to hit the tarmac an expert.
right. No, but my point is like, it's the uncertainty, right? Knowing
Sure.
it would probably be easier for me to go to somewhere that I would Kenya, that I literally knew nothing about. I know it's in Africa. I think it's like savannah, like in a lot of places, but I'm guessing at that. So I know very little about that. So I can get off that plane and be like, hit me, like whatever. But if we were to go somewhere where like I know just enough to feel like a little bit comfortable, then I'm gonna be constantly getting slapped in the face with like all the things I was wrong about.
That's interesting.
And so that's kind of a hard thing. It's like it almost would be easier for me to go somewhere just sight unseen, knowing nothing, because that way it's a little easier for me to not be like, or it's a little easier to be like, I don't know anything, therefore, like all new information is valid. Do you know what I mean? Like, whereas if I get off the plane and I like kind of think I know something about the place, and I turn out to be wrong, that's harder than just like accepting new information. It's like having to correct information that I thought.
Is that a common thing? Because I have another friend, and like his favorite thing in the world is getting told you were right. And like, I have no problem. Like, if I was wrong about something, I'll be like, yeah, okay, cool, I learned something. Or weird, I wonder how I was misinformed of that in the first place. It doesn't feel like a personal assault to my ego to be wrong.
Sure. Um, there's some autism in there. Some of it in my case and possibly your friend's case. I am dude shaped. Now I grew up being treated like a dude.
Hmm.
That there is this kind of underlying
Interesting.
understanding that like whatever I think is correct, regardless of what anyone else tells, and I try to fight this very hard because like I know it's not true, but when you are white and male shaped in particularly in America,
Yeah, you're used to just de facto authority.
kind of, yeah. And I mean, the society society tries very hard to tell me that like I'm more important than everyone else and that I'm always right and
Uh-huh.
and everything else. And as much as you can be aware of that kind of thing and try to fight against it, like I don't know that I had that awareness until maybe in my 20s, maybe in my 30s even. So you have 20 to 30 years of like your environment telling you that you're right even when you're wrong, and that like if someone tells you that you're wrong, they're the one who's like it's just this super like adversarial bullshit thing. So I think that part of it's probably that.
Interesting. All right.
Again, at least for me, I can't speak for your friend, but
I mean, I'll ask him about it.
um,
He's pretty open to it, like, and that's fun. I'm not gonna name him because I haven't even told him we're doing this podcast. So I feel like it would be really bad to just
sure.
out him.
Travel is different when it's a road trip, right? It's just like the two of us get in a car and we just kind of go where we're going or whatever, and we're a little bit more sort of in control of our destiny during the travel process. But an airport in particular is wild because you
Wild.
post 9/11, like I flew a few times before 9/11, and it was obviously a completely different experience.
Oh, fucking tell me about it.
But, post 9/11, especially, here in the US with, the TSA has been established for almost 25 years at this point, and it's just like accepted as a part of air travel that we take our shoes off and we do all this dumb shit. And, you, so for me,
I'm hungry. Did you hear that?
so for me, like the basic kind of rundown for me about the airport, right, is like, here's kind of how the process works for me is I have to I almost certainly have to get up way earlier than I want to. And then there is like the drive to the airport, or God's help me, a fucking Uber or whatever. That last one wasn't too bad. But I like being in an enclosed space, feeling like I'm forced to talk to another human being. That's awkward. But so got to get up like way too early, and I have to make decisions when I'm getting dressed about the clothing I'm gonna wear, because not only does it have to be able to like get through the airport, I have to make sure that like I'm wearing shoes that I can take off easily, and I'm like kind of generally comfortable, and I'm going to be warm enough, because the airport, even for me, the airport is always like chilly.
Which is fucking saying something. Like,
Yeah.
is that a thing? Going back to Leif and Beth, like they call out his thermoregulation issues,
Oh, yeah.
and I never like clocked that as being like a something associated with neurotype. I was just like, Graham's fucking boiling all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely it is.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, we do tend to thermoregulate very badly. That's why at 80 degrees my body hurts, because like it can't get rid of excess heat or whatever. And my normal temperature runs a little hot anyway, so
Gotcha. Okay. Sorry. I totally.
yeah. But so I have to plan for not only the airport, I have to plan for here in Denver, because I have to wear clothing that is appropriate for here in Denver, and then in the airport, and then in the airplane. So it has to be pretty comfortable, and it's probably going to be chilly in the airplane itself. It has to be like warm enough there. And I also have to plan for that clothing to be functional when we get wherever we're going. So it's very hard to. I've traveled to places that are like different climates a couple of times, and it's very hard to dress for like whatever the weather is here, plus also the weather at the other end, without feeling like I have to go to the restroom on the plane and change into a parka or whatever it might be. So I got to make decisions about clothes, and I either have to do that on the morning, which is even more stressful, or I got to like lay that shit out the night before so that that's out of the way. And we go to the airport. There's always a question about whether I need to. Every time I ever fly, I will always go, do I need to check in? Like, do I need to go up to the counter and check in? And I've never needed to do that. And I know that I don't need to do that. But every single time I'm like,
I feel like that's a symptom of our age. Like we were right on the cusp of like an internet ticket being a thing. Like I remember not having a ticket, going to the airport, and like my ex-boyfriend's mom, like when we were kids, like just being like, I can't believe you don't have a physical ticket. This is insanity. And it's just like, I mean, I guess it's okay. I have an email. And now it's just like that still lives in the back of my mind. Like, are they going to fucking let me on the plane?
Right.
All I have is this QR code on my phone.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know. I guess I don't completely trust that mechanism yet. And it may just be that I don't fly. I mean, I think the year that I flew most was like 3 times was an outlier. So I mean, I don't go through airports often enough, and I think that a lot of the difficulty that I have going through airports is just that. It's just like unfamiliarity. It's something that happens just often enough, that I'm like, I don't feel like I have this process down well.
Yeah, like if we were flying for work every like month or something, I'm sure like it wouldn't feel like everything's fucking different every
Yeah,
time you walk in, and that's kind of the feeling like if you only travel like once a year or so.
for sure. And one of the things that kind of makes my autism itch a little bit is the airport is a very tightly regulated place, so there's an expectation that like you're really gonna like follow the rules and that you know the rules and that you know how to behave and how not to behave and whatever. And like intrusive thoughts, there's always some little voice in the back of my head that's like, what if I just yelled about having a bomb or something? And that's not a thing that I would ever consciously do, but like intrusive thoughts work the way that they work. And despite knowing that I would not ever do that or like try to hug a service dog or whatever, these like like he's trying to pet a dog that's like a bomb sniffing dog at work, I would never do these things. But there's a part of my brain that's like, I could do that. And then part of me goes, oh fuck, I could do that. What if I do that?
Meanwhile, there's a TSA agent eyeballing you the entire time, thinking, I wish a bitch would. And you know that because they're just screaming at everyone here.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's the thing. So then we go to the security line, and like security lines in Denver, in my experience, have always been really good. I've never like stood in a line for like an hour or whatever. It's usually pretty quick. But
I
that's
better
hard.
knock on all the wood for the next time we travel.
But the security thing, like anytime you're under like really focused scrutiny like that is really hard for me. Um, just because it's super anxiety inducing, right? It's like there's a person who has like this veneer of authority who's like staring you up and down, and every time they like walk the dog back and forth, I'm always like, what if something in my bag smells weird? The dog alerts, or like, what if they talk about how they kind of foster this like anxiety culture where they're like, we're always watching you, and like we know when you're acting shady, and acting shady could be seeming nervous. Why are you nervous? I don't know, because you're fucking staring at me, because I've had a bunch of dipshit dudes in blue fucking shirts acting like they're cops and they're itching to shoot me, for acting weird. Like I don't know, it's stressful in general. And so then you get at the thing, you hand them your ID and whatever. And in my case, they're always like, "We need you to take the mask off so we can see your face." And I'm like, "This is it. This is how I fucking get tuberculosis." But that, and then there's like the weird like bottleneck aspect to the thing where it's like you gotta kind of stand there and wait when you get ushered through the scanner thing, and then there's this weird clot of people afterwards who are like trying to put their shoes back on and trying to like get dressed and gather their shit and everything through this unnecessary, ridiculous security theater horse shit. And then it's like, okay, well now we have to go. Now we have to get in the train, which is the thing here for those who are not familiar with Denver Airport. The check-in and security places are not like directly connected to the terminal, like the actual place where we order planes. So there's like a train, a little subway train that you have to take.
It's similar to how the Denver airport is nowhere near fucking Denver.
Right. Truly, it is very far outside of town. I'm given to understand that its predecessor, Stapleton Airport, was actually like within. Well, it's been there. They left the control. But we actually lived within Denver city limits for a while and was not big enough for the amount of traffic that was getting. So they built this enormous thing. Random aside there, DIA is one of my favorite like current conspiracy theories about how there's like tunnels underneath and it's shaped like swastika, because it actually is, but there's a like an aeronautical reason for that. And all of this weird like New World Order horseshit. I love all that stuff. Yeah, so then I'm in DIA and I'm worried about being surveilled by the lizard people, so that's the whole thing. But yeah, so we get on the train, and it's like people are, it's worse since COVID destroyed empathy. But like people are awful about boarding anything, getting on and off of trains, buses, elevators. Everyone's like, I'm getting on this thing or I'm getting off this thing, and like that takes precedence over literally everyone around me. And everyone is like, no one stops to let people who are using wheelchairs in, or like people who have mobility aids or whatever. No one's like trying to make room for those kinds of people. They're just pulling their way in and whatever. Like you're in a rush to stand still for 2 minutes before you get to life. It's awful. So that bad. And just seeing people behaving badly to one another is kind of triggering for me. So that's that's kind of a stress point. So then you get on this weird train and you sit on the train for a bit. Um, And then finally, okay, you get out of the train, and then it's like, okay, well, we can go sit down in front of a gate for an hour and a half because we had to get here early because you do have to get there early. But we got here like too early, and now there's a bunch of time that I have to spend waiting in this big weird space. And then the actual plane ride is awful. I mean, I've never had a flight where I was like, that was okay. I've also never flown like first class or those weird like international flights where you get like a little yeah privacy wall that you could put up, and like a bed and everything. I have no idea what that's like.
That's just begging to clean up jizz. I do not understand why they even offer that.
But yeah. So the plane ride is always terrible, and then like getting off the plane and then just sort of acclimating and being somewhere else. So, I mean, like that's 20 minutes later, the experience of like going through an airport and flying.
It's only like 8.
Okay. So that again, I cannot process the bastard time. I have no idea. Um, so that's kind of what it's like for me, and all of that stuff is stressful in its own way, and it's just like it's additive just on top of it and everything. And I'm not in any way claiming that this is like unique to me or unique to neurodivergent folks.
I was gonna say, like, you just spent like 10 minutes describing going to the airport and getting on a plane.
Right. I mean, it's the same for everybody, and it's stressful, for everybody. I just hate it, I guess. It's the whole thing. I want teleportation. I want to just like
Oh, that's a dream.
step on a pad and be in.
That would be amazing. But I don't know. Yeah, the time saving. Like, I do like a road trip, but like only if it's like you're gonna have stops that are interesting along the way. Like, that's the whole point of a fucking road trip to me. But
I have been to the Pacific Northwest twice. Once I flew to Seattle, and once I drove to Portland. And I liked the drive,
it's pretty.
but again, I am a person who likes to drive. So, but it did take 20 hours, something like that.
Yeah, that's not nothing.
Yeah, just like straight through driving, as opposed to the like I don't know 2 hour plane ride to Seattle, whatever it was.
Uh,
Yeah. So I mean, time saving is absolutely. Speaking of saving time, food is hard. Food is a real hard thing in the context of travel. Because again, part of it is like the food's going to be different. Like I'm very used to like a particular routine and a particular kind of set of foods. For those who are not familiar, it's often called a safe food or a same food. This is, I think it's mostly just autistic. I don't know if it's like a thing for other stripes community version, but
wait, like, so regarding that, is the idea of a hyperfixation food the same? Because I feel like that's really prevalent on social media, and people like have heard that term because all these influencer nerds are like, "This is my hyperfixation meal this week." Like anybody, you know what? Maybe people do care. These people have popular accounts. I think it's like really not fucking exciting, but
they're not the same thing. A hyperfixation is a little bit more active. It's a little bit more like I had a grape Pop Tart the other day, and I can't believe how much I like grape Pop Tarts, and I want to eat those for every meal. A safe food is more like I am acclimated to this food, and therefore it's the only thing that like I'm going to there. Like a hyperfixation is a little bit more positive. It's a little bit more like I'm actively going to eat this food, whereas a safe food is more like this is the only food that I can have. Like this is in exclusion to everything else. Like there's a narrow list of things that So like one of my safe foods is like frozen pizzas, right? And I am never like excited about the prospect of having a frozen pizza. I'm never like, oh shit, yeah, I'm gonna fuck up this DiGiorno's. It's just like that's what food is. That's what dinner is.
Gotcha. Because like one of the things about hyperfixation foods that I am aware of is that like you will burn out on it, and like the entire time I have known you, you've never been like, well, I'm not gonna fucking have a freezer pizza because I'm tired of that shit.
Yeah, I'm not an especially food motivated person, so I've not really ever had that experience of having a food where I'm like I have to have this 5 times a day, and then after 3 weeks I'm like if I ever see that again I'm gonna throw up.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's hyperactivity a little bit more like that. I've never had one around food. That's interesting, but I think we have them. We have hyperfixations. We can talk about this for an hour.
Maybe we will.
We have hyperfixations.
Stay tuned.
So many other things. So it makes sense that you get somebody who's super into a particular food and like can't get that out of their heads. Yeah, so like food is a hard thing, and even in a very simple way, like, we go from Boston to Denver, and I'm like, oh, Dunkin' Donuts, I know that. No, I don't.
Right.
And the appeal of chains for me is the consistency, right? I know that if I go to, I don't know, I mean, I hate to bring up Starbucks because I won't go there anymore, but if I go to a Starbucks, I can go to any Starbucks in the country and I know exactly what I'm going to get, and it's going to be the same thing
Right.
everywhere,
Right.
and that is super important for me, is actually consistency. Whereas if we go, if we were to go to something that was like I don't have a good example. I was going to say like Anthony's. If we went to Anthony's, is like a Denver area pizza, pasta kind of Italian chain, fast food place. And like if we went to Seattle and there was an Anthony's there, like an actual Anthony's franchise, I'd still be like, I don't know if it's going to be the same thing, because they don't have that same sort of like factory process that like Starbucks and other kinds of places do. But pizza's a hard thing too because it's so individual, you know, to different places and stuff. And you go to like a little indie pizza joint where they're the only one, and it's like, I don't know what I'm gonna get out of this. I don't know how this is gonna be. And so food is super, super hard for me for a lot of reasons. Consistency is one of them. Consistency in this case, in both senses, both, is this going to be the same as every other time I've had it, and also just like the physical textural consistency of the food. Um, there's like a meme that I've seen a couple of times. That's basically like, I don't understand why my kid won't eat, blueberries, but they'll eat like wheat thins or whatever. And then they have like a picture of four different blueberries, and they're like labeled like, this one is squishy, and this one is firm, and this one is like big, this one is small, or whatever. And then they have the same picture of four wheat thins. It's like the same every single time. And so that's the thing, is like consistency issues and texture issues are very like sensory. And so if I can't relatively reliably ensure that like the food is going to be the same as what I expect it to be, it's really stressful for me. It's a really hard thing. So that's a factor. And then the other thing is just like, I know that this frustrates you so much, but like I am the least adventurous eater in the world. My safe food list is like 7 things, and they're all carbs. But we can go anywhere, and I know that you are excited to street food and like eat out at different places and just like try all kinds of different things and everything. Just
I I'm not putting to say I'm frustrated by it anymore, just because like I know it's happening now.
sure.
Like when we first started dating, my friends would be like, "Why does your boyfriend eat like a 5-year-old?" And it's like,
Hmm?
I don't know, man. But like now I understand it and like I can explain it, and it's like part of me does wonder, like there feels like there's an intersection on the Venn diagram of like I want to be right about this, because like I've suggested things like I'll know what a dish is maybe and be like, I think you would like this, and you fuck no, like you won't even try it. And like that's the time when I'm just like, you could add foods to your safe food list if you tried more foods.
Yeah. I,
But like the fact that you just won't is like, well, now I know better. I don't even care anymore. And I'm like, I'm gonna get whatever is delicious. And you said a million times, like, I fucked up. I should have got what you got. And I'm like, bitch, I know. I'm really good at being fat.
yeah, if you can believe it, it's more frustrating for me than it is for you. There were definitely times when you would have offered me something, and I understand that like, I mean, it's not even you. Like, I understand that people don't make food that tastes bad. I mean, people do, but
Sort of the opposite of the point.
right, the whole point is that food tastes good, right? And so like, we're it's not really about the taste a lot of the time is the thing. Like it's a lot of like this texture and consist. Like messy food is a real problem for me.
Which is weird to me because you love a food you can eat with your fucking hands. I genuinely feel like I could count on both of my hands the times I've seen you use a utensil to consume a dish. Exactly.
But that's the thing, is like a messy food, something that's like covered in like a sauce or has like several component. People there's like a long-standing joke about like different foods touching on the plate, whatever, and I'm like, I can't.
I feel like lots of people don't like that, but
Yeah.
that's not the same.
I mean, it is. It's just like I think it's turned up a little bit. Autistic folks.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah, and anytime you've ever been like, here, you should try this, you like it. I'm like, I know, I understand. I accept that you're saying is almost certainly true.
Mhm.
And it's never like a conscious thought. I'm never like, I don't want to or whatever. Like, there have been a number of times where you've been like, oh, you should have a bite of this. And I'm like, yeah, I should. But I can't pick up my fork or whatever. Like I don't know if it's executive function so much. I think there's some RSC in there. Or not RSC, demand avoidance. Because part of it is like you create this expectation that like I'm going to like it and now go.
You could say I don't fucking like that, and then I would even know better how
Well,
to recommend
the,
things.
the thing is that like is
I know you
the
don't.
stupid part. And that's why this is like really frustrating and why in general like food is going to be hard because here at home I have like a really high control
Mhm.
over the amount over like the foods that I'm going to get, food choices. You go somewhere else, especially when we leave the country, all of a sudden like I have to guess. We went on a Scotland trip and I was like, okay, well, I am fairly confident that I'm going to be able to like survive here. There's going to be plenty of like protein shaky things that I can have. And like, I know they have fucking hobnobs over there. And I did in fact eat like 12 sleeves of hobnobs while we were in Scotland. But like, I know that there are things like that. That's another place where, for example, if we go to Kenya, I'm going to be like, I can't believe I'm saying this, but God, I hope they have McDonald's because I feel like my options here are slim. I would love, 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 love to go to Japan, but I would lose 30 pounds because I don't think that I would be able to eat anything.
You really wouldn't. They have McDonald's.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so travel is hard for me, and I think for a lot of neurodivergent folks, just from like a food perspective, And I had one of my exes was similarly gustatory to you, was always like super excited about the idea of like when we went to Mexico, she was like, "Oh my god, I'm so excited to like eat street food and whatever." And I was like, first
Yeah,
of all,
rightly so.
first of all, princess, you're not going to leave the resort. And in fact, we barely did. But and I was like, God, my only thought about this is like, I really hope they had Cheez-Its. I really hope I can get like a case of wheat.
There is something so fucking depressing about the thought of being in Mexico and just wanting Cheez-Its.
I'm saying, I a younger me would be mad at you. Would be like, you don't understand, like you're being shitty, or whatever. And I'm like, no, I am just as bothered by it as you are. More so, I think. Because then the follow on to that is we'll leave the restaurant and for like 3 hours afterwards, I'll be like in my head just being like, you should have fucking had a spoonful of the thing, you dumb shit. Like you maybe would I just berate myself and tear myself up about it. So
I mean, I hate that. You know what's interesting though is like beverages you're not like that with.
I know, and that is fucking weird. I I think part of it is like a consistency thing, right? Because I think,
A liquid is just a liquid.
yeah, well, I think when we talk about foods, I never have to worry about like, what if this is squishy, or what if this is gritty, or what if it feels bad in my mouth? Like a beer feels like a beer feels like a beer.
I mean, you say that, but like, you guys, I got Graham to take a scorpion shot at a bar here, and it's literally it's a pickle shot with a little tiny fucking scorpion in it, and like the entire time from when I went to the bar and bought them and came back and handed it to you and you put it in your fucking mouth, I was like, he's not gonna fucking do this.
I think that it is probably important context to mention that that was like my seventh drink of the hour.
I don't think it does matter because like
This
you're
was like
not neurodiverse once you're drunk.
true, but it does tend to being drunk actually does tend to like alleviate it tends to alleviate a lot of the anxiety that gets in the way of some of these things. So like all the processors are still there, but I think a lot of times when I have resistance to like trying new things, it's not so much because autism says no, it's because there's a lot of anxiety around the uncertainty of it and like all these other kind of things. And it's the anxiety that stops me from doing these things.
I see.
So yeah, I am absolutely still 88. I still can't tell time and I still, have like super black and white thinking or whatever. But because I'm generally less anxious, it's easier for me to be like less dry, I think.
I guess that probably does track some because I am now remembering like when we were in Boston, we both tried oysters. Like neither of us had ever had one. You probably because it's scary, me because I'm from Denver. And we definitely had some drinks and we tried them and they were fucking disgusting. But we tried it.
Yeah, oysters. I have a broad ban on seafood anyway.
Yeah, but like I
But
said, we're gonna fucking try this, and you were like, "Let's go."
well, right, and again, some drinks factored in.
All
Yeah,
right.
that's absolutely
So now
fine.
I just have to get you wasted to
Yeah,
enjoy
like
eating
super fucked
anything.
up. Exactly, super fucked up. And if we drink enough, then I get to enjoy it twice.
Oh, dad
That's
jokes.
that's not fun. But yeah, so food stuff is always kind of hard, and that kind of factors into the planning too. Is that especially if we were, like I said, if we were going to go somewhere that wasn't like very westernized, I'm already like, here we go. Like I have to just like settle. We go to Japan, and I have to just settle into the idea that like I'm gonna have to learn to like seaweed chips or something. Like I'm gonna have to find
I
something.
didn't eat a single seaweed chip when I was in Japan. Like I can't make it more clear. Like it, it's gonna be fine.
Right. Well, but again, you eat like a person. So I mean, for someone who's like, I will not eat fish, I'm gonna have a problem in Japan.
I didn't eat seafood one single time.
All right. Well, anyway, my point is that like and see, this is what I was talking about before about like my idea of what a country is probably not accurate to what that country actually is, and so
Mm-hmm.
you know. But yeah, if we go to someplace that's not like kind of super westernized and has all like the foods that I'm used to having, I'd be like, yeah, that'd be a thing. When I went to
When we go to westernized countries, the problem for me is that they don't have the foods I'm used to having. Like it's so funny to me that you're like, yeah, I'm comfortable with this, and I'm like, this is not good.
I remember when I went to Iceland the first time I went, I went solo. It was around Christmas 2016, and I did absolutely zero planning. And when I say absolutely zero planning, like I need the listeners to understand, I bought a plane ticket, and that was literally it. I did nothing else. So then on the day that I was set to go, I was set for my flight, I grabbed my backpack and I put like as many clothes as I thought I would maybe need in that backpack, and I grabbed my phone and I went. I got off of the plane in Iceland, and for those of you who have never been or who are unaware, the Keflavik airport is like a 45-minute bus trip outside of Reykjavik, the capital city.
Very similar to Denver.
Truly. So I get off the plane in a Keflavik, and I got on a bus to Reykjavik, and I got off the bus. They let you out in this weird like parking lot kind of area, and I looked around and I was like, okay, now I'm in Iceland. And that was literally it. I had no place to stay. I didn't do any kind of planning around food, around anything. Ultimately, it was probably one of the best experiences of my life. I think because I was forced to be so far out of my comfort zone. And as stressful as that is, I do actually think it's good for a person to be challenged in that way. But yeah, so every single day, one of the tasks that I had was where am I sleeping tonight? And maybe it's in an alley. Every single day, one of my tasks was what am I going to eat today? And it was just like basic matters of survival or whatever. And all I did, I rented a car one day and that went catastrophically wrong. But all I did when I was on that trip was just like wander around and enjoy being in a different place and like try and not think about like these demands, and I try not to think about like, okay, where am I going to sleep tonight? It was like, I guess I'm going to find a hostel or something. And I did. I managed to find hostels, sometimes at the very last minute, every single day. And every one of them happened to have like 3 beds left available on the day that I showed up, but they were booked like previously and going forward. So I just happened to walk into all of the right hostels on like the one day when they could have me. And that for anyone who knows me, especially you who know me now, it's like, how did I survive? Like, how did I not have a mental breakdown over the course of this thing?
Because why would you?
Well, right. I mean, there's so much stress and so many stress, and like that whole trip was like uncertainty, like focused and concentrated. Kind of made it through it okay. So there's probably a whole other episode in there. I genuinely don't remember where I was. Oh, so the story was that I found a pizza place on one of the like main streets in Iceland where a pizza was, I don't know, like maybe 12 inches, right? It wasn't like a very big kind of thing. And again, for those
The
people,
hubris of this guy. 12 inches isn't very big.
um, like a 12-inch thin crust pizza, or whatever, it wasn't like a ton of food. And for those of you who are not aware, Iceland's economy is actually really strong. So I think I paid like $27 for that like pretty small, kind of pizza. And I want to say that I ate there like 4 nights out of the 6 I was there because I was like, okay, I know that this is good and this is all that I can.
Fucking tragic. Look, I also have been to Iceland, and I'm not gonna say that I loved all of the cuisine, but there was no way I was gonna eat the same fucking thing every day while I was there.
That whale blower. Although the good thing of that long rambling, relatively pointless story is it does cover another thing, which is kind of a corollary to the planning process, but packing is real tough for me because I'm like, not only do I not understand time, but I don't understand weather. So like you can't I don't know what it means when it's 45 degrees outside in terms of like
I
what.
know you guys, he literally every day goes and stands on the front porch to see.
Yeah.
And we live in Denver, as we've said like a million times during this episode for some reason, but it doesn't matter what the weather is right then. You will have every season in one day, and you just need to like take the shit to be prepared.
And that's kind of the problem. Is that like I said, I have no concept of what like the numbers mean in terms of like what the temperature is going to be or whatever. I know that high humidity is bad. That anywhere over 72 degrees Fahrenheit is my bones are going to start to hurt.
It's gonna be hot, and then it's gonna be chilly, and it might be wet. Like it's not that hard.
But so I don't know how to like really land for that, especially with sensory issues. It is really difficult to plan for that kind of thing because like, you know, I have this sweater, that black sweater that I have that I could only wear under very specific conditions. It has to be cold but dry because the thing doesn't breathe very well. And so if it's like cold and sort of humid, I'm gonna get sweaty in there and I'm gonna want to tear my skin off. So
Some people might argue that that's a useless sweater.
yeah, probably. I mean, the good thing is that cold and dry is here. I mean, it's Denver for 4 months out of the year, so it has moments. It also can't be windy because the knit is just loose enough.
And it can't be wet. Like the days are shrinking.
It's very specific, yeah. But that's exactly my point, right? Is that I like the look of that sweater and I like the feel of it because it's a little bit like kind of compressy. I like that kind of thing, but it's not a very useful kind of sweater. And so now my problem is, do I pack that sweater?
No, is the answer.
And do I pack? I'm going to be there. And again, this is not a neurodivergent thing by any means. There are infinite memes about packing 3 weeks worth of clothing for an overnight trip or whatever.
Yeah, because that's another thing people fuck up at the airport. They're trying to bring like their entire wardrobe on carry-on like motherfucking assholes.
True. So you're packing and overpacking is a really hard thing, and I think a lot of us have had that moment where you're like, okay, I'm away from home for a week, so I should bring 15 books to read, right? That's the right number.
The right number is no books.
I have learned that, and I very much want to be a person who like reads during downtime on trips, but I understand at this point that I'm not. The best time that I ever had with that was when I was using a Kindle, and I was like, I have 1,000 books in this tiny tablet-sized device that sits right at the bottom of my bag, and
You say that like you don't have a phone now.
sure, I can't read on my phone,
Oh my god, it's the size of a fucking Kindle.
right? But there's a huge difference between like reading on an LED screen and reading on like an e-gig thing. There's a
I mean, I get that, but if you really wanted to read, you could read.
No, I mean, if I really wanted to read, I would go find a library or a bookstore. I will not, and I cannot read like I know this about myself. I cannot read like anything wrong. That's why Twitter works for me. But yeah, packing and overpacking is a hard thing. Around clothing and just like, am I gonna have the right clothing for whatever the weather's gonna be like? Am I not gonna have the right clothing? And should I leave some space in my bag in case I have to buy clothes when I'm there? And like then have to be able to bring those things home. Um, Especially if we're going somewhere where I might buy like something relatively bulky, like a sweater or that kind of thing. I'm always like, I either have to throw out some shit from my bag and be able to pack the sweater from home, or I have to like mail it home to myself and then I don't get to wear it, while we're on this trip. So that's a little thing. So packing is kind of a difficult thing, and I do absolutely agonize about that. And like I found that this is true for almost everything, but making lists is often is often really helpful for me in that regard, partly because I'm making the list beforehand, so I'm
Yeah,
not,
that's something we have in common. Like we both do that.
and so that way I'm not making decisions about what to bring in that moment, and I'm already stressed about it, and like we have to leave in an hour.
Why are you packing an hour before we're leaving?
Well, I'm the other way. I mean, you've seen it. My bag is sitting by the door 3 days in advance because I know that that's the only way to diffuse that stress is to do it outside the context of the trip, and like I said, according to a list and everything. But I have enough different like variations on clothes from different manufacturers that like I have favorite pieces of clothing, and like I always want to bring like all of my favorite stuff along with me. That's why I was travel with you, and
Huh, huh.
that was cute. Like obviously I want to like bring all of my favorite clothing along. And sometimes my favorite clothing is probably not the right, if we're going somewhere in the summer, then I don't need like my sweaters and hoodies and things like that. So it's a struggle to be able to kind of kill my darlings and be able to like look at, okay, these are all, a week beforehand, these are all the things that I think I'm going to bring, and then go through and be like, okay, I need to leave 30% of this behind, I need to cut a bunch of this out.
Is the struggle, do you feel like you need to quit talking over when you fucking cough, because wow, editing is going to be a nightmare. Do you feel that when you are making these decisions, like the problem is like you're not being logically critical and like you're like trying to overcome, like it doesn't feel to me like I should be like killing my darlings when I pack. Like if I'm going somewhere hot, I don't need my hoodie. If I'm going somewhere like where there's going to be snow and shit, okay, my tank tops are staying home. Like it's very, I don't know, it feels informed by what I need, not what I want.
Sure. And I think there's a sort of emotional component to it about like again, like trying to bring my favorite, things or whatever. Sometimes I will have a garment that I really like, but is maybe not the best for, where we're going to go. So another example, again, going back to that sweater, is I'm like, I really like this sweater, but unless the conditions are very specific, I'm not going to wear it.
All right, I'm going to tell you something right now. You look very nice in that sweater. I fucking hate that sweater because the amount of times that I have to hear about this goddamn sweater, it's too hot, the wind's going right through it.
It's true.
You don't like that sweater.
I love that sweater, but I have a complicated relationship.
He's in a situationship with this fucking sweater.
Abusive relationship with my sweater. But but it's so sweet to me when things are exactly right.
Oh my god.
I feel like I should clarify that I'm not trying to make jokes dismissive of abusive relationships. You can probably get
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, I think that's part of it. And sometimes there will be like, I need 3 shirts for this trip, and I want to bring this one shirt, but like these other shirts are more versatile or generally better for the thing or whatever. And it's like I have to be like, in the moment where I'm trying to choose what I'm going to wear on the day during the thing, am I going to pick the thing that I like, but is maybe not as suitable, right? Or am I going to pick the thing that is best suited to the, like, who cares,
So the answer to my question is yes.
I have forgotten the question, but
You want to say?
I'm a Leo rising. I gotta look good.
You always look good, so I don't understand why you can't just bring the things you need.
Very sweet and incredibly deluded.
I'll fight you.
Let me see, new environments. We kind of talked about new environments, just very briefly, like.
That's a point of travel. What is your
Right,
bullet point?
But it's also stressful, just being somewhere unfamiliar. We kind of covered most of the high points on it, but just being in a different place is. I mean, it's mostly good stress, but it's stressful anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And just especially when you are. I try very hard to not to assimilate necessarily, but like not to be ugly American when I'm traveling, right? So I
appreciate that about you.
Especially anytime we're going to go somewhere, it's so important, and it generates a bunch of anxiety for me to like be correct within the context of wherever we're going. And I genuinely think that probably most places no one would notice, and no one is thinking about it anywhere near as hard as I am. But like I always want to be like respectful of someone's culture, and if I go to another country, particularly one that's not Canada, I want to try and avoid, because like I'm a guest in your house, and I don't want to like fuck your shit up, and I want to try and be as sort of like culturally sensitive as I can, and try and be as like respectful as I can of like the environment, the traditions, and whatever else, without just being a typical American, and just assuming that everything is about me and that everyone's going to do whatever. I don't like that. I very much like the idea of, again, not assimilating, but being as unobtrusive as I can, while getting to see all this cool shit that you have in your country that I don't. And so for me, that's always like kind of a stressy thing. Is I'm always like, am I doing that? Am I not aware, because I don't travel very much and I've lived the absolute vast majority of my life in this one country. Is my behavior ever like crossing lines and getting into that kind of the American territory? And I think I
I
know.
feel like that's wild for you to worry about as someone who refuses to speak in public half the time. Like, that's a problem with Americans most of the time. People are like, you guys are fucking loud, you're rude, you take up so much space. By default, you are the opposite of that.
Well, and like I said, I try to be as conscientious as possible, and I think that I probably maybe go a little far in the opposite direction.
It is to the point where even at home, people are like, does Graham fucking hate me? He won't talk to me. And it's like, nope, he just won't talk to anyone, so don't take it personally.
It's not that I won't, but I can't. Um, but just kind of being in environments that I know are, and that's I think one of the things that's stressful about like the notion of being in a new environment is that like when it's somewhere that is like 2 degrees off from here, I'm comfortable here because like I know the rules basically. Again, we go to Toronto and like I know how to act. But if we go somewhere that's just like a few degrees further outside of it, the environment itself and all of the like stimulus that I get from the environment are telling me that this is not where I'm comfortable. This is not where I'm from. This is not what I'm used to. And I think that sense of being somewhere else is, first of all, great. I really like to be in new environments and places like that. But it is a stressful thing because I think it really leans very hard on that button in my brain. It's like, don't be a fucking American out here. Like don't be a stereotypical American, and like be respectful of people and be conscientious about like their country and their culture, and you're here temporarily and all of these things. And I think that again, I probably take it a little bit too far, and it generates a ton of anxiety.
Yeah, I feel like you definitely like I can feel that. I don't know, it's a bummer because it's like you feel bad about even being in a place almost, it feels like.
Yeah, I really do. And I think especially, I mean, I love the phrase white guilt, but again, if we go to Kenya, right, I'm gonna be like, here I am like a white dude shaped person in the middle of Africa, like I'm not gonna feel good about myself. And shit. I'm just mostly gonna be like, I shouldn't be here. This is people like me have done unimaginable damage to this entire continent and all of its people.
I hate to break it to you, but same right here, right now, my dude.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm aware of that, and I'm like that here at home too. It's just that I don't go to very many places. So, when I'm at the grocery store, I don't have to be like, oh god, I feel like a huge colonizer here in the Pop Tarts aisle. Especially Denver, Denver feels like an overwhelmingly white city. I don't think it is.
It is.
I feel like,
It is, and also it's segregated.
right. Well, that's I think a huge part of it is that like all the places that I would go are just full of white people. But yeah, so I mean, there's a lot of that, and obviously, for the listeners, I have a great deal of anxiety around. I don't want to say social justice issues, but around being a default member of like the colonizer class, and so being in places where I am like a tourist, I just try to be aware of that and try to like kind of step as lightly as I can. But I think that there is a line between treading lightly and being respectful and being a nervous wreck about it. And I think that I tend to lean way over to the nervous wreck side of the thing. Like,
Yeah.
I genuinely think that if I were to go somewhere with like a really distinctly different culture than I'm used to, that people would also think that I was weird, but not necessarily for the same reason. Like
Mhm.
think that I was, Um, Jen has been to Japan, and one of the things that really fascinates me about Japan is the notion that I don't think of myself as a very heavily tattooed person, but I have a lot of tattoos, and um, I know that there is, for whatever reason, I have like this like hyper focus about this preservation of that in Japanese culture about tattoos, and I understand that things are changing, there, but maybe not as quickly as they have here in the States. But anyway, the point is like, I'm a visitor in your house, and I understand that tattoos have a certain connotation there, and that they're going to cause a certain reaction in some people. And I don't want to make someone uncomfortable in their own home. And so I'm very much like, okay, well, if I go to Japan, I just have to make sure that I'm wearing long sleeves, and I have hand tattoos, so I gotta like get my hands in my pockets as much as I can, and just like try to cover it up, and like not trying to be neurotic about it, but just very much it's like I understand that this is a cultural difference between us, and I want to be as respectful of that as I can, and I don't know. I feel like that would be like that in a lot of places, especially in places where, people who look like me fucking ruined your country.
Again,
Right, I mean, people
here,
who look like me
now.
are actively have been ruining my country since it was founded, since long before it was founded, and continue to do that every day. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it's not as prevalent a thing here.
For you personally, or for white men personally?
For me in general, like I do sort of walk around like constant threat and like feeling like a colonizer guilt. It doesn't feel as, I guess, again, because it's just an environment that I'm used to where most people look like me. I think that being in a place where the environment itself doesn't look anything like home, or looks different enough from home that I'm very aware that it's somewhere else, and also the people mostly don't look like me. That I would be like, I feel like I don't feel like it's great that I'm here. I feel like I'm just by virtue of being here, like stomping all over, you know, cultures and traditions and spaces that are not for me.
There was one time I do feel like that I can think of when we were here and you said something similar. Uh, I was like, "Oh, hey, look, there's a powwow happening. That would be cool to go to." And you were like, "Oh, I don't think I should be there." And I'm like, I mean, they they're advertising and they want people to come. So like, you should not feel that way, maybe?
Yeah. And I think that it is a little bit more than a little bit irrational, certainly. It's not like I'm, kicking in the doors to a powwow is not being advertised. Like I just walked in and was like,
Like you're just going to somebody's ceremony and
yeah, or,
like, let me see those feathers.
I'm not just like, just like jumping into somebody's backyard
Sure.
at the barbecue or whatever, being like, I'm here now. And there is difference around that. I don't know. It's like, I think it is racism. And I'm not going to say it's like good racism because obviously there isn't any, but like, it's not motivated necessarily by feeling superior to these people. It's motivated by the notion that like I am aware of the difference, which I also think that like hugely magnify. It's like very black and white thinking that like Mexican people are somehow vastly different from me.
Like when my boss told me I don't act Mexican.
But like I think that for me a lot of it is kind of that notion that like that black people or Mexican people or whatever, anyone who's not white has a different experience and a different, set of cultural values or whatever it might be. And I focus so much on the idea that there is a difference, and that gets conflated with the notion that as a white person, like my, I don't know, ancestral legacy, whatever, is like being awful to these people because of that difference. Like I'm not that different from a lot of my ancestors. I'm just trying to create distance between myself or I like to think of it as like sort of just not intruding on spaces that are for me. But I think that it comes from kind of the same place. I think that it really is just like Mexican people are something different from me. And instead of being like, that makes them awful or I should subjugate them or whatever, I'm like, I should leave them alone.
Leave me alone, Graham.
All right, I'm out of here. Thanks, guys.
But it doesn't make any sense.
I know.
I feel like, I don't know.
No,
this is a whole other thing to talk about.
There's probably an episode in this, and I don't know that it's necessarily a neurodivergence thing. so much as just my own neurosis. But um, although it is very common amongst autistic people to have like I don't know justice sensitivity, I guess is sometimes how it's referred to, where the notion that there is injustice in the world like has really like potent effects on all of us. And again, that's not obviously that's not like a you're the only ones kind of thing, but it's it's like everything else. Like a lot of the a lot of the difference between my brain and yours is not that we feel different things. We feel the same things, but a lot of my levels are turned way up. So there is definitely a thing about that, and that's part of why. I mean, God, you should see my Twitter mute list. I mean, it was like full of just like you know, uh, I just don't. I can't handle seeing posts that are about like how terrible we are to one another, especially in this country. Um, and I kind of hate to be like a good vibes only social media kind of person, but I'm like, I am so consumed with this vast stress all of the time that like adding in new instances of all the fucking terrible things in the world just makes it worse. Like there's not, it doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't catalyze me to like pick up a sign and get out in the streets, and it just makes me want to die. So not not the best. You may edit out that whole last 15 minutes or whatever it was.
Probably, but we're still at an hour and 32 minutes.
Oh, Christ.
So maybe we pick something to wrap up on.
Yeah. The only other 2 points I had were additional communication difficulties. Like it's hard enough for me to communicate with people here in the country that I grew up in, where everyone's where people speak the same language. I have difficult enough time communicating with you sometimes. And then add in, again, a different culture, a different language, different understandings of body language, different understandings of like sarcasm, things like that. That's kind of a rough thing. And again, if we were to go to, somewhere that was not like a westernized country, I feel like it might be much harder. I mean, it's hard for me to read people anyway.
I find it weird that you would even stress about that because, again, you don't talk to people.
Yeah, that is true and is also irrelevant to to the vast pool of anxiety that I have around it. No, I think that I mean ultimately when you look at a lot of this stuff, it really is just my brain making up guys to be afraid of. It's just my brain hashes this notion that like there could be some difficulty, and then goes on like a Wikipedia deep dive about all the ways that that difficulty can manifest around me, and then how all of those difficulties, what that would mean, and like how that would ruin my trip.
But that's so funny. Like, you're not the guy to, like, go sit at a bar and then just, like, look over at the dude next to him and fucking chat it up.
Right.
So, like, how is a misunderstanding ever going to happen?
Well, there are times when you have to communicate with people. I mean, I hate to think of it would be an emergency or something, but something like that, or even just something as basic as like just asking directions. Hey, I'm trying to find this museum or that monument or whatever.
I mean, okay, I get it.
So that's a thing. That's a factor, admittedly not as potent of one. And then the other thing was just like net supply. I was anxious enough. One of the things that gave me a great deal of anxiety going to Scotland was like, can I bring my Adderall with me? And like ultimately the answer is yes, stupid. But like, I don't know. There's always the possibility that we go somewhere that maybe has like very different rules about that kind of thing, or whatever. And my brain can conceive of the notion of being stopped in customs and having someone, like steely eyed stare at me and be like, what are these bills about? Whatever. And so
Your prescribed medication with your name on them, to
yes,
be clear.
yes. And so again, I think that really underlining that point that has been true of everything that we've talked about this episode, I am capable of inventing a scenario where something is a problem, and then I immediately switch over to not only like this is a weird outlying thing that could potentially happen, I guess, to this is absolutely going to happen, and I'm going to be shot as a result.
I feel like that's where, like, my general anxiety, like, I get all of that. Like, you can't help, like, just catastrophizing.
Mm.
But at some point, like, you need to get on with the goddamn thing.
Right. And you know, in cases like that, like there's also the possibility that you would go somewhere for long enough that like you don't have enough of your meds, and it's like, how do I deal with that? You know, can I order? I mean, some of these meds might be over the counter in places, you know, but like, can I get my doctor to prescribe me things and have an overseas pharmacy fill a script, you know, or is there like a way for me to, you know, I mean, the Adderall is one thing, but like, I have another medication that like I really do have to take, the one that I have to take time every day. I'm like, if I don't have enough of this to cover the trip, like, what do I do? How do I get more of this when I'm there, because I can't not have it? And like, does that mean that I can't travel for a length of time that exceeds whatever my supply for this thing is? What if just something stupid happens, like my luggage gets lost, and now I don't have meds that I actually have to have? You know, like that's I think much more of an issue for people who have like meds where like I will die if I don't take this. You know, it's something that's actually like critical to them. But you know, it's a concern certainly, and it's something that I can be anxious about. Ergo, it's something that I will be anxious about catastrophically for you know.
I think, yeah, I mean, I get it. It's just, I feel like it comes down to, and like whenever I started thinking about like talking about this topic on the whole, for everybody, anxiety and excitement are two different sides of the same coin. And when you're traveling, like you're just living in that cycle.
Yeah, I think that's true. Um, I think they are the same mechanism.
So I think, I don't know, just try to live more in the excitement side. All right, I'm done. Are you done?
I'm pretty done.
All right. Thanks for joining us. Stay awesome. Bye. Nothing? I'm not going to say anything to say goodbye.
You said best.
All right, great.
Best, better than I could. You can find us on social media, on Instagram at idkwhatthatmeans.podcast, or if you happen to be on Blue Sky, idkwhatthatmeans.bsky.social. Or you can contact us by email at idkwhatthatmeans.podcast@gmail.com.
We hope you have fun or learn something. Probably not both, but hopefully both.
Probably not both.
Anyways, thanks for listening to I Don't Know What That Means.
Thanks, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.